I'll quickly get us started, and I wanted to, ask Marion, just to give us a little bit of context around her space. And I am actually particularly keen on Marion's space because as a Nairobian, okay, I wasn't born here like Joy, but I came in really early. And I used to spend a lot of time because I went to school on Gara Road, which is where Sarakasi Trust sits, okay? And back then, when I was young, it was a fantastic space. It was vibrant. But what I remember is the Shan cinema. And, talking to Marion earlier, I was just telling her, part of my culture growing up was watching Indian movies. Because the school I went to was a Samaj school, and that's what we did for leisure. We'd watch Indian movies, and if you asked me who my favorite film stars were then, I'd tell you people like Kulbhushan and Hargadan and whatever. But that was my culture growing up. And so, because Lydia challenged me by coming in with her Maasai earrings today as part of the craft, I wanted to also share something from Kenyan culture, which I think a lot of you would think is Western. And so today, instead of wearing my usual so-called African jewelry, I wore my pearl. And this is actually by a lady who also comes from our neighborhood in Gara, and who is a jewelry designer, and who is Kenyan Asian. And so, we really are diverse. We really are diverse. And, so that's the thing I want to say. And so with Marion, she's not starting Sarakasi off as a culture space. For me, it's a culture space even before Sarakasi. Okay? So Marion, I want to throw you right in. Tell us a little bit about how you came upon the space.
How did I come upon the space? First, I was a very happy user or tenant of the Go Down Art Space, and still I want to recognize you for that, Joy. I mean, that's where Sarakasi started. We actually started on the backseat of a Volkswagen Beetle. That's where we had all our three files or so when we just started. And then, very fast we found a space at the Go Down Art Center where Sarakasi started with its training and capacity building program with the acrobats and later on the dancers, and grew and grew and grew. And we had so many users at one point that we started looking for another space. So yes, that's how we kind of stumbled literally upon the old Shan cinema. Myself, I had been many times along Gara Road. I would go there and buy my fabrics, but the building is huge, but I never seen it. And I'm not lying. I just always passed by, parked my car, went to buy what I had to buy, even strolled along the road, but I didn't see the space. Only when we started looking for a space that we thought, something that can house our 100 of acrobats and dancers, where should we go? I mean, no, somebody said, well, there's this space that's already been empty for a long time. So that's when we went to Ngara Road and we saw this huge building that I had never seen, but I just remember it was gray and there were a lot of street vendors in front of it, and I think that's why I never seen it. Maybe I just walked by and never looked up, I don't know. But yes, the Shan cinema used to be a cinema. It was built in the 50s of the last century. And it had been empty for 20 years or so. The Shan family had used it as a surety for to buy land or to buy some other property in another country. And then when they couldn't pay the bank took it. So when we bought it from a bank. It was a receivership. And we started to renovate it so it could house our offices, our artists, and also it was a public. But we were very aware that it was a public space, so we really wanted to preserve it as a public space as well. Over the years, people have come and said, "Can we buy it off you because you want to?" It used to be a church for some time as well. There were tenants. They wanted to put a church back in there, and then there were people who came, "No, we want to buy it and knock it on the ground and then put on flats and whatever." And that is something that we always told ourselves as a board, this is a public building. It's a cultural space. Yes, there are many other cultural spaces in Nairobi, but it's the only cinema that is still there as a cultural space. And it is hard to maintain a building like that. You know, it's huge and but it's made for culture. I mean, it has a lot of nooks and spaces. Like, there's nothing else you can do there, really. You can house a bank in there, or I don't know, a school or whatever. So, yes, so Sarakazi has been in there since 2009. We were founded in 2001, so we're still there. We still try to upgrade it. It's hard because, you know, there's maintenance, there's renovation, there's preservation, there is the roof with all the rain and the dust, and, you know, needs repair. So, but we managed. The good thing, the nice thing that happened from the beginning is that we moved in there with a whole bunch of artists who also felt like that building is ours. So when we had to like knock down some walls and custom made the space, it was also the artists that, you know, that helped and that worked there. And up to this day, they still tell you, you know, that is our home, that is our building. So yeah, we're very happy to be there. And being in Gara has been an adventure as well. When we came, Gara had gone down a bit, if I might say it like that. Gara again is coming up, but not as fast as we would like it to come up. There's always a problem with the garbage and the trucks and the running battles between the city council askaris and the guys that fix in their cars. But on the other hand, it's a nice community where we're at, and we found a residence there, and, you know, we serve the community. There is some exciting new initiatives that came to Ngara, so we hope to work together with them. And yeah, as an organization, we are implementing of course, our training and capacity building, but we also have moved, you know, into other counties to do our advocacy work, and we just hope we're here to stay.
Great, that's a lot. That's a lot. And, you know, can you imagine in all that I heard running battles, you know, trucks parking, county askaris harassing, and here I am, I've got an opportunity, I've got a, you know, county government official here. Humphrey,
yeah.
How does the county view the people it's supposed to serve? How does it view, you know, the citizens that it's supposed to serve? Because, you know, here is Marion putting up this fantastic public space, and yet she's got trucks parked outside, of course, compromising security and all that. Yeah. How do you engage? What do you do, you know, or, you know, vis-a-vis public spaces?
There's quite a number of things that the county do with regard to that. And with the first question of how we view the residents, it's not just residents, but the clients. So I think this has over time changed. So it's not just residents, but they are clients. So which means that how you handle your clients should be respectful and should have some, you know, some dignity, some order. And I think that is what the current administration is actually trying to ride on. But there's been quite a lot of challenges. Those many years that Marion has alluded here, this was before the promulgation of the new constitution that we have now. So I think over time, things have evolved and things have changed. There's quite a number of things that the county has done with support, of course, with technical support from UN Habitat. First, for the enforcement officers, they have undergone refresher training on how to handle clients. So the bungling and that kidogo has improved. I can't say that it is better. It is worse, but it's much better compared to previously. Then also, I think one thing that most residents don't understand is when you're arrested with a county officer, what you just need to do is to comply. You don't struggle with them.
I was going to ask, what do you mean comply?
Comply means if you're arrested, so of course you have the right to reply, yeah? But don't struggle with them. anytime you try to resist, then that becomes another case, because then they're trained on how to handle somebody who is resisting. So I think that is something, yeah, I don't want to delve into that, but yeah. So I know there'll be more question around that.
I'm sure.
but don't worry. Yeah. But what we say is just comply, and then we can follow the due process in terms of what needs to happen when you're in this situation, so that we don't end up getting someone injured or something like that. Okay. But number two, on the parking spaces and especially in the area of Ngara, the issue of trucks actually getting into the neighborhood is something that we have been trying as much as possible to discourage. But you see, also sometimes there's so much that happens in the system. So enforcement officers sometimes will be compromised. So those are there. So they'll not to maybe enforce. Sometimes also we just have, maybe it's on a weekend or public holiday, and sometimes we also don't have enough cranes maybe to pull those kind of cars. Also there's the issue of the staff. Sometimes we have quite a number of staff in that sector who have aged over time and are going out. So those challenges that come with the institution. But there are areas that have been demarcated for specific vehicles. So if they're in the neighborhood, heavy trucks or trucks are not allowed to. But you'll still find them there. Right. So those are normal challenges that we have.
So I think just coming out of that, do you make provision for these heavy trucks elsewhere?
Yes,
there is provision for that.
There's provision, yeah.
Okay, and then in the training of your public officers, do you make them aware of the new, you talked of the new constitution, of the Bill of Rights, for instance? Do you?
Yeah. I think because of the refresher with the new constitution, of course, the implementation teething problems. So also we have people who you don't just transform them once and they transform. So over time, so you've seen some officers being prosecuted for different mistakes, and they own up to them. So yeah, so over time, those refresher has helped in terms of bringing them to speed with the new order.
Now, really, the question, on the floor today: does public space matter?
Yes. I mean, what would happen if I would say no, right? Because there's not a no here. I mean, it's a public space. The word says it, public space. And a public space is there for the public to use, for the public to enjoy, for the public to, and the public includes, of course, I'm a creative, or at least I'm managing a creative space and creatives. A public space can be used for so many things, and in my line of work, it would be great if public spaces could be used more and more by creatives. And then I speak about not only about acrobats and dancers, but visual artists, exhibitions, music. It has always been my dream for Nairobi, because I think Nairobi has its own brand. It's like, it's a metropolitan. It has so much youth. It has so much talent. I mean, we heard it here the whole day, what people have been doing when it comes to installations and art and I don't know what. That Nairobi could exhibit that, facilitate the exhibition of the art and the creativity that we have in this Nairobi, in this country even. And when I was seated there, I was quickly looking at, because we also heard people here talk about tourists. And I just Googled, and I saw that in 2022, 1.4 million tourists came to Kenya, 2/3 of which to Nairobi. Now what if you would have a very good plan? We have Vision 2030, we have the Kenya Tourism Board, we have okay, I don't know, we have many parastatals, but not only parastatals, also organizations as ours and the Go Down and others. What if you would have like a real good plan so these people wouldn't only use Nairobi like, okay, Nairobi is like, ugh, there's too much traffic and noise and I don't know what, let's go to the Masai Mara, which is great too, by the way, I don't want to say anything negative about the Masai Mara. But what if the cultural public spaces we have and the performance platforms we have and all that other infrastructure that we do have would be utilized better to put Nairobi on the map, to get income for our artists and recognition for our culture? That is my dream.
I was just thinking of where we are right now, Ukumbi Mdogo as a public space.
Yeah.
And I know we launched one of our projects once here, and we went into one of the back offices and we were reminded of the history. And today, very, very fortuitously or rightly so, this was the British Council. This was the British Council. And so we're here now as Ukumbi Mdogo, which means we've kind of taken over the space. But what are we doing in terms of sustaining these public spaces for ourselves? I think that's the question that I keep coming back to, that it was built, by the British, for whatever purpose, but we've taken it over. But what are we doing to endeleza the spaces, to build on the spaces that we have? And now that you're here, these are the kind of questions that I'll keep throwing to you in terms of, public space, what you think about it, what you're going to go back to the office and tell them you must do in order, to increase public space so that it can impact, what Marion is saying, expand tourism and things like that.
Marion knows very well that we've come from far in this conversation around public spaces. And I remember when, during the launch of Sarakasi, and Marion used to invite the county, and we used to work actually very closely. You remember with the late Elijah Gevi, we used to come to Sarakasi. We used to attend those events just to show solidarity with appreciating what Sarakasi was actually doing as a dome. So we've been to that space and we know. But talking about public space from a county perspective, there's much. First of all, Nairobi County as an institution deals with already 825 public spaces. So we're not just talking about one public spaces. And the 825 public spaces, they are across the whole 17 sub-counties in the 85 wards. So you can imagine, we're not just talking about one. So we're talking about public spaces. And also, what is public space? So public space cannot just be a facility like this. So public space is a green space outside there. It's a road. Actually, road is a public space. It can be a stage, a bus stage, can be a public stage, can be a public space. So we look at public space holistically, not just, And so when you're asking about public space for expression, we look at all those as spaces actually for expression. Because how do you showcase? How do you bring your talent to the people? And how do you interact with the people? So we look at public space from three key important areas. So number one, looking at it as an instrument for urban transformation, because it's very important to look at it from that perspective. Number two is look at it from to raise competitiveness and livability of a city, because we know it will spur livability of the city. And then number three is we look at it as an entry point for holistic urban development, urban redevelopment. And now, for those of us we are talking about redeveloping Nairobi and what is the culture for Nairobi. I think this key principle can help us when we're looking about transformation, when we're looking about livability of the city, we look at it from that perspective. Because then that helps us not just to look from one angle, but we look at it holistically. There are so many things that comes with it. So it's just not for expression, but also to look at other things that support system that comes with public spaces. But also in terms of improving the quality of life, which is very important. So how do we ensure that not only the mamambogas, the sports people, it has to bring everybody on board, so that you have people who are doing different disciplines from different disciplines, but still enjoying the same public spaces. Yes.
Thank you. I think at this point I should actually open it up, and we can take a round of questions, and then we see how we go. So if you've got any urgent question at this point, and I saw your hand first over there at the back, and then over here in the front. So we'll start with you. Check.
Thank you. So I think my question goes to the county government. There's a lot of mamambogas we see on the streets, people making furniture, car repairs, and all sorts of things. But there's the artists, there's a lot of artists who are starting out who don't have places where they can work, you know? 1. 2, sometimes the canvases are expensive, and yet we have a lot of public walls that belong to the county, which can be opened up to not only be canvases for them to express themselves, but also really to create art that eventually then belongs to the city, that then can attract those important tourists that we are looking for. So how can you and the county perhaps figure out how to specifically address visual artists to help them find safe spaces and secure where they can work from, 1. And then the second question is, what is the policy that the county has, for instance, for graffiti artists? We know graffiti artists are usually a very endangered species everywhere across the world. But I think their work presents a very good opportunity for the county to brand itself and to attract more like cultural and urban tourists. Thank you.
I've just got 2 very practical questions. Number 1, for the county, we've heard several times people mentioning social halls that used to exist in Nairobi. We don't see them now. Why isn't the county working to reactivate and find the spaces that can be social halls, the community spaces? I would think that that's one of the jobs you should be doing, because people need these. It's your job. I mean, I think that maybe you should invest in that work. And for Sarakasi, how viable are you for theater companies to perform there, to have a stage actually that has facilities and sound? And I mean, I would think you do, but I don't know why theater groups are not coming to Sarakasi if they believed that you were viable. And again, visual art. The only visual art I've seen at Sarakasi has been outside above, not inside. So I wonder how visual artists could take advantage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are very important questions. So number 1, space for visual artists. Actually, we are trying as much as possible. And as I said, the current county is not like the old county. So we are very open to engage. Yeah. So it comes to, and I think of late you have seen we've worked with the TICA actually to do murals in quite a number of spaces. And we keep opening it up, and we keep inviting artists who want to showcase their work to come. You just come, approach me, and we'll get you somewhere you can do your art to be appreciated. So we have been working with TICA on this, and not only TICA, but also other artists like Bankslave and Akina Kirosh, you know. So we are trying as much as possible. But these people, they approached the county. So if you approach us, I think things have over time changed, and we are embracing the culture of murals and also looking at what other great cities are actually doing. And also with the concept of the Safer Cities project, it has actually helped to make officers actually understand the importance of visual arts in an urban setting. Number 2, in terms of social halls, the social halls are still there. We actually have 75 social halls which are still up and running. Of course, we can say that some of them were actually given for rehabilitation of street families, but very soon we are finalizing the development of a children home in Ruai, and the 2 halls that were occupied for street families will actually go back to the community. So that is Joseph Kangede, there was and Kayole. Yeah, the one in Bahati, we were able to close it, and the social hall for boxing is actually back to the community. So those social halls, they are there. Yeah, the question is also we want to see community coming forward to want to utilize them more. Yeah, I think there's been a decrease in terms of use. So what we need to do is how do we reactivate them? So, and actually spaces for expression for visual arts, actually social halls are the best places for them to come to use for creative. So if we work together back to back, and this is why I was saying the other time, approach us and let's see what we can do so that tupeleke hizi vitu mtaani, si ndio? It's only by you coming, we can map out and see which particular social halls are there, and then we can work out a plan in terms of how do we utilize them.
You know, as you're speaking, I'm just wondering, how has the county made it known to, to the Nairobi citizens that they can actually approach the county? I mean, what kind of relationship do we have in terms of, you being approachable? Have you put out something that, makes people aware that they can actually come to you?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a two-way, yeah? Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be a two-way traffic, yeah? So people need to come, the resident needs to come, as we also try, and I think currently we are running on the slogan of the governor, let's make Nairobi work. Not let the county make Nairobi work. No, it's let's make Nairobi work. So by let's make Nairobi work, it's actually inviting you to give ideas on how do you want it to work. Okay, so that is the rider actually. But also I know that we have a challenge in the communication department, so perhaps maybe that's where we have not been doing very well. But yeah, this is something that we can take up with the CS office and see what modalities. But also during public participation and such, those platforms, if we attend those public participation, those are also very good, useful platform for us to come and air out some of the issues.
Oh, thank you. So now we know, okay? So Kimani, I'll just, go to Mani and then, pardon? Okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, Kimani, you just hold it Kimani, 1 minute. Yeah.
I think before Kimani, there was something on the policy. And I can say that one of the biggest challenge that, and this is a take home for all of us here. I think one of the biggest challenge that we are having as a county is having a policy on public spaces. So not only a policy, but also an act, yeah, a legislation. So that legislative framework is actually missing. So if we have lawyers in the house or those people who do policy, I think this is a quick, we call it what, low-hanging fruit that we can begin actually working around and bring it for the adoption. So the teams who are working on issues of public spaces, we can take this up very quickly. And I know the current administration is keen on putting policies in place. Yeah.
I wanted to have a very small reaction as well on the safety. As you all have maybe noticed, since COVID, there's a lot of acrobats on the street as well. There was no jobs, so now you find them at traffic lights and junctions and intersections, and there's no other space for them, or at least I think there's no other space for them. So it would be really great if these public spaces, and we have 825, would be better and more accessible, not only to graffiti artists, but also to other artists. I was in Marrakesh some years ago, and there's a huge square there, and there's only artists there. And you have the same in Cape Town, and you have the same in a lot of other African cities as well, where there's a designated space where artists can go, where they're safe, where they're allowed to perform, and where they can earn a few shillings. When it comes to whether the Sarakazi Dome is viable theater companies, yes, we are. Like, as we speak, we have Chijo 4, which is one of our biggest clients who hires the Dome for theater, for schools, for set books. So it is possible. We have light, we have sound, we have a stage, we have a backstage, everything is there. Why some people don't come to Ngara, it's just because Ngara is still perceived by a lot of people as like not safe, not clean, a lot of traffic, no parking, but I'm going to ring your bell very soon so we can, these are things we have to work on together, and that's why I'm here actually, and that's why this platform is here. Like, these are the things we need to map out, all of us. We need a strategy together. Yes, we need a communication plan, and the county maybe should be a bit more accessible for us, but you're very right when you say we also have to, pull up our socks and go and knock on your doors. So that is something I'm taking away from this. Thank you.
Yeah, actually for Ngara, I actually met Dan. I told you the environment officer for Ngara. I actually met Dan in the morning and I asked him, okay, so you are still in Ngara? So he said yes, so I'm going to pass his number.
Wonderful.
And I'll tell him I've sent you a number to Marion, so get in touch with her and let's sort that area. The governor also grew in Ngara, so he has a history with that place. So we'll try as much as possible to work back to back and see.
Not only in Ngara, there's many other Ngaras in Nairobi, so I'm not only here to advocate for my own backyard, but it's everywhere.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so if they can start with Ngara and sort out other spaces, that would be a good place to start.
Actually, Humphrey has alluded to it, because mine was on policy, and I'm happy you appreciate that on the question of policy, because we can attend all these forums and say anything, but so long as the county does not ground these proposals or solutions on policy and law, then we will just be repeating the same thing, because like you're saying, this regime is different. And it's the first pronouncements the governor made was to allow photographers to use the streets for free, festival and so on. So the heart is there. But for me is that he must ground it on policy and law, such that even if he's not there, if he does his 10 years or somebody else comes, the civil servants who will be there will continue with the good work that is there. For instance, that idea that Judy mentioned in the morning, you are the guys who implement on clear planning and construction of buildings here. I think if you gave these guys an incentive through a policy and say that before we approve your plans, show us also like what percentage of that you're going to allocate to the arts, and it can be art spaces within what you're constructing, and you give them an incentive that is grounded on policy, then the private sector would be able to quickly take up some of these things and some of them. But the most critical for me thing is that it must be grounded on a policy and law. Thank you.
I just wanted to make a few observations and just say, even before we think about the whole idea of expression and heritage, I think we need to be able to exist in spaces that are friendly. I keep thinking about a child who grew up in Umoja in 1980s. In the evening, at 7, at 8, they would be out there, praying because the spaces were friendly. And what we have seen, not just in the city but also in the suburbs, is the population has increased exponentially, but the spaces have reduced. And of course, some of the causes of this reduction include securitization, counterterrorism. If you are walking in Nairobi in mid-90s, there were so many spaces. A good example, outside, on the other side of Norfolk. These days you can't walk on that side you have to move to this side because there are so many barriers. I think also we've seen what I would call change in what maybe would be expression in the margins. Also, you would go to railway and there'll be people who would be performing at the bus stop. Today, I think every day I drive over the weekend on Ngong Road, I see young boys who are doing acrobats, on the street lights. So what are we doing to give such kids? The other day I was driving and my 10-year-old daughter said, I wish we used the route to Mbagathi because they were on the other side. So I think there's that. Of course, we also need to appreciate the alternative spaces for expression, like the matatus. I think they are helping us, for example, to create a space that may not exist in terms of the physical spaces that are declining. What does this mean? I think it means it's not just about the county government or the central government. I think all the stakeholders, all the institutions need to play active role to ensure that these spaces are there. Because we see, for example, in this town, right before COVID, I live not very far from Uhuru Park. Once in a month there will be noise over the weekend because somebody is having a big crusade. So if the religious, if the preachers have access to these spaces, even the community can have those spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Shali Chebet from Kunkui Design Initiative, which is a design and build non-profit. So my questions, I think most of them will go to Humphrey. From a design angle, I'm just wondering what is the county doing to bring artists, whether visual artists, musicians, all form of art. What are you doing to bring them to the table when designing or providing for public spaces in the city plans? Because I think that if they are able to contribute to how those spaces are designed, how those spaces are envisioned, we are able to create spaces for them to even come and put in their print, to even come and have a space for them to perform or to display what they are doing. And I was also wondering in terms of, I know space is normally a contentious topic, but in terms of the available spaces, are there any programs currently within the county, like time-based programs, that allows for visual artists to come and showcase what they are doing? So if it is, let's say, City Hall Way, do we have programs in which, let's say, artists can, over the weekends, they can come and display what they are doing, evenings? Are there such allowances within the county frameworks? And also, you mentioned the 825 public spaces within the Nairobi County. Is it possible to allow artists to take over those spaces or to use those spaces as a way of securing those spaces from things like grabbing or just letting them lay idle? Can we let our artists use those spaces even if it's on a meanwhile basis? And are there other government lands or facilities that we can allow our artists to use as we wait for government to secure funding or to have a plan to use such particular facilities or spaces? Finally, since I'm from the civil society space, I was just wondering, are there opportunities for us to work with you as government in providing for artists in terms of public spaces and or in terms of even creating programs that allows us to engage artists or performers, etc.? Thank you.
In terms of designing public spaces, you see, some of these spaces already existed. So it's not that we are redesigning them afresh. But of course, we can improve on them. So we can regenerate them together, jointly. And I think, as I said, we now have a chief officer in charge of art and talent, which we can work with. We can work with him in actually redesigning some of these spaces. So Clément is from an art industry. You all know Clément from Caliph Records. Yeah. He's the chief officer for talent and art. So that is somebody we can reach out to. because he's from an art sector, so he understands even much better. So yes, we can explore that opportunity to actually connect. And as I was saying, this conversation should not end here. We should look on how we regroup, and as a resolution, and I hope that will be the resolution, Irene, as we finish, that what are the quick take-homes? What do we want to do in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term? So for me, I'm seeing those. So let's not lock it just at conversation level, so that some of these things we don't just discuss here, but we actualize them. So I'll be very much happy to open doors at City Hall, either the county secretary, chief officer, to make sure that some of these things we are discussing here are actually seen to be implemented. In terms of use of public spaces, as I said, things have evolved and we have changed. You know, Kitambo, acrobats could not perform even in CBD. You remember those days? They'll be arrested immediately. Yeah? But nowadays, they'll perform and nobody will actually bother them. We see guys with the guitar, you just, kwa kona tu mahali, utapiga guitar yako, you go your way. Nobody's bothering you. So things have changed over time. So now we have allowed creatives actually to use the spaces as much as possible, because then we realize that that is the way of other cities are doing that. Why not Nairobi? So there are various spaces that we are activated, Hilton Square, National Archives, Aga Khan Walk. So there are various of them, Jivanji. So there are so many spaces that we are activating. So the question is also for the artists, come, let's engage, and when you want to use it, so that we know that it's only good for us to record and know that so-and-so is using this particular space at a particular time. Yeah, it's just documentation. It's not just you are being charged. So,
Yeah,
so
but-
people just need to come forward. Yeah, in terms of also programs, yes, we have a tourism and culture department, which has very progressive people. I think I heard Joy talking about this in the morning. Susan and her team, they are actually looking for programs. So if there are programs that creatives have, actually bring them forward, because that is what we'll be doing moving forward. So installations, we are thinking of Nairobi installations, week or day or something, and we want to explore those ideas moving forward. So just come forward. I'll connect you to the right directors or right departments, and we get this rolling.
You know, just listening to you, Humphrey, and I think throwing it back to Shirley's question, which I think for me, the sense I was getting was that you would like some structure around some of these things. You know, there's a sense in which, and it was said, I think, in the earlier panel, that ad hoc way in which the county government operates. Let's do a marathon. Haha. In no time, you know, because why? We've got runners who have invested years in becoming champions that are recognized elsewhere. So what do? Let's bring them together. Let's have a marathon. It's successful. Let's get the churches who have invested years in choirs, because you know Nairobi has got many churches, so you will get enough choirs for that festival. And then you have this ad hoc thing where you are not investing in music within the county, but you have a festival, and then you chalk it up and say, we have had a successful festival. And I think, you know, from that design perspective, what are we doing deliberately, infrastructurally, to develop these things so that they're not just an ad hoc thing, but or let's have an art exhibition in Uhuru Park, and let's ask the artists to bring in their work and charge 100 bob, and then you say it's successful. How can we plan better? And I think for me, this would be one of the things that we'd be looking at here when we're looking at our spaces. How can we plan better?
Yeah, that's a good question. And how many of you have interacted with the CIDP, the 2024, what's that? The CIDP, the County Integrated Master Plan, is actually, if you look at the current master plan, is very progressive. You just need to interact with it. Some of these things we are discussing here have actually been earmarked in the master plan. And you know the master plan, the CIDP is where you draw budgets. Okay? So interact with the CIDP, all those music, all those sijui, the things we are saying, actually majority of them have been mentioned in the CIDP. So what we just need to do, and I'm inviting you, even the county officers are looking for partners, for stakeholders who can actually help them in saying that, okay, so this is how we are going to run this in this particular, for the next five financial year. That is already there. So what we just need to do is come forward and say, let's say, for example, Sarakasi, what do you want us to do in this particular year? So we now know that the Nairobi Festival will be an annual event. So we now know. So how do you want to plug in, and when we are beginning to plan, so you become part of it?
Yeah, but I'm really glad you mentioned budgets, because I think this is a sticking point. Because if Nairobi citizens are tax-paying citizens within Nairobi, okay, for me, I think growing up, and growing up within Nairobi, I had the benefits of the city. And I think those days I didn't even ask because, you went to school, you knew there was an equipment scheme that provided books, that provided rubbers, pencils, whatever you needed, it came from the county. Now you're telling me, come forward so that we can plan together, and I guess cost share. Some of these things we never go back. Now it's cost sharing, now it's this. What happens with the budget that I'm assuming is within the department? What happens to that budget when you're planning? Is there a budget?
There is a budget. Every line item has a budget allocated to it, only that sometimes it can be not much. So that's where sometimes we call for partners to come so that we can increase the budget. Yeah? Mm-hmm. There's a budget, there's a startup budget. At least there's something. We can start.
I'm actually itching to say something. I'm here.
Yeah.
Basically, the reason why I wanted to address Humphrey on this particular issue is I grew up in Eastlands. How many of you grew up in Eastlands or have interacted in Eastlands? What was Eastlands? You know what Mkono you? Okay. Huh? So in Eastlands, the way I play a bit of that djembe, I learned in Nikiwa Eastlands. There was always a social halls that we would go to, whether, because I grew up in Maringo, whether it would be Jericho or going down to Kaloleni and find ourselves in Ololo and the like. And Kibende na ngoma ilikuwa inachezwa, na we used to dance and do all those things when we were younger. Now the thing which happens is, you mentioned very well, and that's why I want to take on you on this particular issue of the social halls being there. Social halls are there. I know, for example, if you go to Embakasi Social Hall, sasa ni kama Kasaiba Cafe, because guys have cut it into spaces and are using it for business. So whatever things social halls were being used for before is no longer the case. This space used to be a hall, an empty hall. It was renovated until it has become this space that can be used. What have we done with the social halls to make them usable and to be able to be used either as boxing spaces, performance spaces, poetry, dance, cultural spaces? What have we done? They are still the same way they were. They are shells. Hakuna kinafanyika. And I want to go a bit further and say, even when it came to sports, they are talking about the spaces that used to exist. And the spaces were there. You would go to Mbotela, you find kuna kiwanja ya ball. Ukuje Marish, Ofaro, St. Patrick's, St. Dr. Kraft, there were viwanjas. Kwa estate katikati, Ofafa, ndani kulikuwa na viwanja. All those spaces have become semi-slums. Mabati zimewekwa nini. What is the county government doing to try and make these spaces better? The new spaces that are being built, do we have any space and set aside for social halls, for amenities, for whatever? Do we have that? I don't think that has been happening. And that's why I believe I would relate this to one simple thing. Some years back went to South Africa, and there was something they were doing at SABC, South African Broadcasting Corporation. They make calls. They tell you, we want this number of comedies, we want this number of dramas, you want this number of documentaries, etc. And they give you the budget line of what you should be applying for. That's exactly what Dr. Garnett is talking about. Do you have budgets? Do you have areas that you say, this is what you want you to come and do? This is how we want us to deal. This is the area we want to develop. Where are Kina Mudamba and Kina Joy, and how can they come in and be able to help in doing what you want to do? Which area do you specialize in? Otherwise, for now, nitakwambia tu kweli, Sakaja ni jamaa best, lakini it's just populist for now. Nataka kuona watu wafanya job. Tuache tu kuwa watu mabesti, piga gitaa na kuenjoy watu wafanye job. Asante.
No, thank you. I just wanted to make some comment on this question of engagement and this question of budgets as well, and to ask Humphrey to kindly enlighten us on the levels of engagement that perhaps we're missing out on as residents. It is very clear to me that if I don't engage, things will not necessarily change. Yeah? We have to engage. Yes, I think we need to push the county, but I think we need to engage ourselves and sort of say, how do we engage? So do you know your local chief? Do you know the ward administrator? Is there a neighborhood resident association in your area? Which are the strongest CBOs in your neighborhood? Who is your MCA? Before we go to the central depository, which is the annex and City Hall, and we're looking for Humphrey to connect us back to our MCA, do we know who that person is? I think one of the big lessons that we've had as the Go Down is to really appreciate our neighborhood. So you know your ward administrator, you know your MCA, you know the CBOs, you know your local chief. Because if they cannot push from that bottom area, those budget things are actually not going to happen. You might find a shift happening. So you're finding that something has been allocated 50M, and then it's gone down to 15M. Where are the voices that are going to push that 50M stays 50M? And it is our voices. So we need to figure out how we engage at those levels. So I was just going to ask Henry to kindly share, what is it that I ask a local chief? What can he do? What is it that the ward administrator can then do? What is that engagement that I can have with the ward administrator? What is the power of my MCA? What do I engage them on? And then, of course, we all know our CBOs in our neighborhoods. Which are the strong ones in our resident associations? How do we engage them? So that was just my question, to then try and see how that comes back to the CIDP, because those have budget lines, but those budget lines can disappear from one year to the next. And if you don't stay engaged, it will go.
How do we engage with our neighborhood? How? And this is the same thing I was, when we were having a conversation, an informal conversation with Marion here, I was saying that we can try and organize our community. So that, because if we are reading from the same script and we put more pressure on our MCA, because he is the voice of the community, yeah? If he's not speaking for us, then we need to find ways of engaging ourselves, and we give him blackout. Because MCA, actually, all the resources that are allocated, it is him to lobby for those resources. So if he's not lobbying, ndio hizi pesa zinapoteaga. They move from 50 to 15, or even to 5, or even sometimes nothing. Because he's not lobbying, he's not engaging. And they keep running away from the neighborhood because they think that you only want money. So I think it's organizing from the bottom, organizing from mashinani, yeah, so that we can engage at this particular level. A good example is Karengata, yeah, Karen Langata, yeah. They have a strong community association there. You will never do anything in Langata, even at City Hall, they will never give you approval without a letter from Karengata. And that is the kind of engagement that we need to, that's the kind of level we need to get at, where nothing will happen in that particular area until the residents have stamped and said it's okay, now it can happen. So our thing here, we just want to sit back na tunataka vitu zifanyike. I think we need to move away from there.
I don't know if we do, but do we need civic education so that we know what our responsibilities are as citizens? Because that's what I'm hearing, that we need to know that when you elect that representative, whether it's an MCA or an MP or whatever, they're actually going to represent your interests. It's not that they're getting a job and that's the end of the story, but they're actually carrying your interests with them. And then when they do not go and speak to county, you can actually, or you have a mechanism for following up with them to see why they are not speaking to county on your behalf. And I think this is what we are waking up to this morning, and you know, so that you know that people will come to you. It doesn't have to be me individually, but I should be able to send my MCA or my representative to the county to say that I promised my constituents this, and they're hounding me. They want to see results, and that we know that your job is to deliver those results. I don't know how we can put those things together. And I know I saw your hand up. If you can just have a minute to say it.
Are these public spaces, either government-owned or privately owned, used to generate revenue? And if so, how do you ensure that they are inclusive of young performing artists who cannot really afford, just an example, the 40,000 that Ukumbi Mkubwa asks for every other time when you need to put up a performance there? And if there are ways to ensure that these spaces are available for people who cannot afford the high fees, are there any communication systems to these young artists to let them know that this space is available for you? You do not need to be someone who needs parking space, for example. Because the truth be told, we come and put up a show here, but it is you who will drive home in your cars. We will be walking along Mwindimbingu at night. So how do you ensure that these spaces will be available for this, speaking for them, as a young artist, for us who cannot afford to pay 50,000 or 100,000 to book those spaces, even for something small like just a day of rehearsal? Because just to put it out there, I remember I have spent a full day moving around where I live and in Nairobi to find a space to rehearse. And at the end of the day, we ended up renting a room for just 1,000 bob, a one-bedroom house to rehearse because we couldn't find a space to go. How do you fit 25 actors in a one-bedroom sitting room to rehearse? So how do you ensure that we do not go through all that hell as young artists?
Nairobi, as I said, Nairobi has 85 wards, 17 sub-counties. So until I know where you reside, then it can be easy for me to help, to assist. Assist you get a closest public space for rehearsal.
Are you open for conversation?
Yes, I am. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So we can work back to back and see how we can assist you. But also we have a Department of Youth Affairs who are in charge of all the social halls. So you can just write directly to the chief officer and you'll get a response. So just write a letter. If you are performing art and you want to use a particular social hall, just write to youth chief officer, Youth Affairs at Nairobi City County, and you'll get assisted. So, as I conclude, I can say that the conversation around public space cannot just end here. It's because when you're talking about public space, we look at different things. We are looking at different interests. We are looking at different people. Yeah. Somebody is talking about child-friendly spaces, women-friendly spaces, disability-friendly spaces. So it comes with all this. Many things that we need to look at. But the few things that I want to leave this team with is number one. I think for me, what is important is number one is how do we protect already spaces that we already have? How do we protect them? That is number one. Number two is if we are to create more spaces, how would we want us to create them? And I thank the team that are working along the river because we are now beginning thinking, how do we work, how do we reactivate the spaces along the river and activate them for use if we don't have spaces. So we look at those potential. Then issue of facilitating access for an inclusive, safe spaces. How do we do that? And this I'm throwing to you because I don't want to say ourselves, but we want to work together as stakeholders in revitalizing and creating these spaces. And in terms of, we need to develop a citywide strategy for public open spaces. I think this is something that is missing, and I think we can only jointly work together in enabling this kind of framework. Because I've heard people, you don't just want to engage, but you want to engage in a certain framework. And then the last one is, we need to develop and lobby for policies. As I said already, we don't have a public space policy or a bill or an act. So even if you want to operationalize, what are we operationalizing? Because it doesn't exist. So the first thing we need to do, and this is, if this can be a take-home for British Council and Tawaza, we need a policy. Policy number one, because even the Culture Act we talked about the Culture Act, but we don't have a policy. So that still brings a lot of problems. That's why you heard us talking about reviewing it. So we need a policy, and then we do an act to operationalize it. So if we have those two, if we can take that and say, for the next 3 months, this is what we want to run with, so that I can continue meeting this phase, mpaka tuzoeane. Ama namna gani? Haya, thank you for that.
You said a lot what I wanted to say, but yes, we definitely need a strategy. A strategy that maybe goes for 3 years or 5 years, so you know this is a starting point, this is an end point, and how are we going to get there? Who do we need? Who do we bring together to the table? Yes, it starts here, and I also really, really hope, you know, this is indeed the start. Communications is very important, reaching out to the different stakeholders for the county government, but also believe that the county government can reach out to the unions and the guilds and the associations that are there for certain artist groups. It might be easier, or maybe it might not be easier, instead of dealing with individuals. Because each guild, if I might say so, or association, can already go to all the people they represent and say, what do you guys want? What do you guys think about, you know, when it comes to public spaces? What is your idea? So we can get certain think tanks, you know, I mean, I can talk to, as I sit here representing a lot of acrobats and dancers and a public space, and, you know, what would our idea be? And it would be very interesting to sit on that table and indeed be part of that. I mean, Nairobi River is just behind us, you know, and we can be a user like so many others. So, and it's very exciting as well that we sit here and can talk to you, because it's true, the regime has changed. Things have not always been like this, and let this be like a renaissance, you know, of Nairobi and the spaces, and going forward, and hope that in 5 years' time we sit here again and we say, we've done this, 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 and this, and it's benefiting an artist like, you know, this lady here who said, where can I go? It's so hard, and I know it's hard. I mean, we have a fund as Sarakazi to actually give to some of our artists so they can pay for the transport to come and train, and training is for free. So it's also, it's hard, because there's poverty, there is, you know, for you are there as an artist and you can make that revenue, it's hard. And indeed, public spaces or social halls can be of great help when it comes to your personal development as an artist. So I'm positive. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, that's a wonderful note to end on. Marion's positive. I'd like to really thank the panel. We have drawn out a lot, you know, from you, Humphrey. I'm sure you're exhausted. And I know it's a difficult area. But I'd really, really like to thank you, because as an invested citizen of Nairobi, who started off life with signs of, you know, where public space was concerned, keep off the grass. You know, if we start there, you know, that we now have access, greater access. I mean, it's really wonderful. But I'd like to thank you as well, the audience, for participating and for helping bring out some of the issues that concern all of us. And I think I would like to ask you to please give Humphrey and Marion a round of applause for being